Well, welcome back again this week to an analysis behind the news. We're here in the global warming area of Wisconsin, where it's 10 degrees below zero with a wind chill factor of minus 31. So we're not real convinced about this global warming business from a practical standpoint. Of course, we like to broadcast this news to you to keep you from moving here. We don't want to get overcrowded, you see, overpopulated in this area. Seriously, I watched 60 Minutes yesterday for the first time in years, maybe even decades. I was on 60 Minutes some years ago, so I know what they can do to someone who's being interviewed and the issues they want to support. Particularly in my case, the cameraman told us that they weren't interested in finding out the truth of a matter. They were interested only in getting some footage to support a preconceived idea and position they had on an issue. So they weren't out there reporting, they were out there gathering footage just simply to sell an idea. No sense going into what that idea was now, but yesterday a couple of things struck me as I watched 60 Minutes. One was a reasonable report on the United States companies being hacked by the thousands by the Chinese government, specifically through the PLA, the People's Liberation Army. Now that has been taken away from the Army and given over to their equivalent of the Chinese CIA because they got caught at it, and so they're being punished for being caught. But at any rate, in this hacking expose of the Chinese government, something came up in my mind that caused me to think about why they don't talk about certain things. One of the ways of convincing people is to tell the truth, but only enough of the truth to get them to mentally swerve into another channel that they want them to go into. They don't talk about a lot of things. And the thing that struck me about this particular thing in regards to hacking was they don't talk about it in light of trade agreements. How would you like to have a trade agreement with a country that hacks you all the time and does it deliberately, state-sanctioned, in secret as much as possible, and that will skew the whole trade issue completely? Besides the international aspect of trade issues, forming more international government, international courts, on and on and on and on, one of the things that is a real problem is if that country is attacking your businesses through the internet by hacking and getting company secrets, copyrights, that sort of thing, to outproduce either in quantity or quality of a particular product or a product that doesn't even exist, and they're able to come out on the market with it the same time you do. I've had that happen to me in my company. At one time, I had a situation where someone came into my company and took it to someone they were working with, and that distributor took it to China. And by the time I was ready to issue my new product on the market, the Chinese had it shipped into that distributor, an exact copy of the samples that I gave to this individual. So that wasn't a hacking situation, that was a physical situation. But that's what's going on through hacking as well. So how is that going to skew any trade agreement? You can't have trade agreements with governments that are like that. Communist governments. Vietnam is a communist government. China is a communist government. Russia is a communist government, whether you want to label it that or not. So on and so forth. Throughout Asia, you have these types of government. And you think that we're going to have a level playing field in any trade agreement? I don't think so. The other thing that was on 60 Minutes that rather bothered me was an interview with Sean Penn over his interview with El Chapo in Mexico, the man who escaped from prison, who was the leader of a drug cartel. He and Kate Del Castillo apparently set up an interview with El Chapo, and they didn't tell the authorities. Now, here is an individual who is an escaped convict, an individual wanted by the Mexican government, an individual wanted by the United States government. And we have this celebrity going somehow, finding out where he is, and going to meet this guy based on the procedures that this fugitive has laid out for them to follow to reach him and be interviewed. Now, he says, Sean Penn says, that he had nothing to do with the recapture of this individual. That may or may not be true, but the point that I want to make is, why isn't the United States government indicting Sean Penn? You know, it is a crime to know where an escaped convict is and not reveal that to the authorities. Now, in the interview, that never came up. It was something that the 60 Minutes interviewer never mentioned. They talked about whether or not it was ethical to print an article about this thing and why did you do it and all of that. They never talked about the fact that it is illegal not to reveal to the authorities where an individual is if he is an escaped convict. You are aiding and abetting. As one wag told me this morning, perhaps the same Justice Department individuals who are involved in the Hillary taping or the Hillary emails and that sort of thing and not indicting her are also the same ones that are not indicting Sean Penn. On the other hand, maybe Sean Penn did reveal this information. If he did, well then probably he's not going to be well loved by the drug cartel. In either case, it's just a very bizarre situation. In the bulletin of the John Birch Society that I always write the forwards to, I pointed out that Russia, this is the January issue, by the way, this year, I pointed out that there is a move by the Russian government to form a coalition, including the United States, to fight ISIS. Interestingly enough, the Financial Times this last week started to also join in on the idea that there must be a united global front to defeat ISIS, that we need to form a world coalition to do this. Again, it is using another issue to build internationalism, more international government, more international armed forces, all sorts of things of that nature. They will use any crisis to do that, to get the idea that the American citizen would have in their head that we can't do this alone, or we shouldn't or should do it alone, whichever the case may be, but it's got to be in league with the rest of the world. That we've got to follow a united world situation instead of being independent, making our own decisions that are good or bad for ourselves. One thing that kind of struck me, and it sort of summed everything up for me, pictures to me say 1,000 words. A lot of people, they kind of gloss over the pictures, but this is very interesting. This is out of USA Today on the 13th. And it shows Obama and his State of the Union address. And the picture here, it says that Obama goes out fighting. And it shows Obama and Ryan shaking hands. And they're both grinning from ear to ear. This shows me how really friendly they are. If I was Ryan, for instance, I'd quite honestly be very reluctant to even shake hands with the man. It would be difficult for me to be civil, even though he's president of the United States, because of what I know this man is doing to the country. And that sort of thing is that sort of a glad-handing, grinning ear-to-ear respectability to me in the face of the destruction of the principles upon which this country were founded is astonishing. But at any rate, the thing is that I'm going to have in the next bulletin, I believe it is, of the John Birch Society. I write these things 2 or 3 months in advance quite often, so I'm not sure if it's the next bulletin or not. to show the background of Ryan a little bit more so that you'll see that there's really been no change between Boehner and the leadership of Paul Ryan. And it revolves a lot around the Aspen Institute and the training that Ryan received there. So you might, if you're a member of the John Birch Society and get the bulletin, look forward to reading that in the near future. It explains a lot of why there really is no change in the Republican leadership in the House of Representatives. It's the same thing, different face to it, if you will. And I believe the face of Ryan is far more professional than the face of Boehner. He's very smooth. He's got a charming countenance about him, but there's not going to be any change in the politics. Until next week, we'll see you then.